Hey there, and thanks for tuning in with us for this episode of Stay Sharp in Digital Engineering. We are continuing our digital product series with Propel Software. We wanted to get to know them a little bit better, so we invited Tom Shoemaker in, the Vice President of Product Marketing at Propel, to join us in the hot seat and share some history and background on the company, some customer stories, their market strategy, and some insights into how they are intentional on unifying engineering with sales, marketing, and service. So let's tune in to hear how Propel is building the future of PLM with Salesforce, AI, and a culture of collaboration. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Stay Sharp in Digital Engineering, the podcast about all things digital related to products from engineering, manufacturing, service, and beyond. I'm one of your hosts, 𝙿𝙬𝙎𝙎𝙀𝘿, and I am joined by my co-host today, Jonathan Scott.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Jonathan. It's always good to be back in the chair. It's been a while, actually.
It has been a bit since we recorded one. So yeah, it is good to be back.
It's good to be back. So today we are continuing our digital product series, and we've invited in Propel Software to join us to tell us a little bit more about the company today. So maybe you've heard of them, and maybe you've always wanted to know a little bit more about them because they have been getting a lot of great press lately. And so we're going to dive in today to get to know them a little bit better. And to do that, we've invited a guest with us to join us today, Tom Shoemaker. Hey, welcome, Tom.
Hey, good to be here.
Great. We're really glad you're here today. So let me tell you a little bit about Tom. Tom is the VP of Product Marketing at Propel, where he's been... Let me try that again. Tom is the VP of Product Marketing at Propel, and he's been there since 2015, helping companies transform how products are built, sold, and serviced. With a bachelor's in mechanical engineering and an MBA as well, he began his career as a manufacturing process engineer at Teradyne, and then spent time in pre-sales, R&D, and marketing at PTC. So he went on to serve as CMO at a European edtech company before joining Propel. And so he brings together a unique mix of engineering, product, and marketing expertise. For sure, with that background, Tom, that's for sure. And I asked Tom a couple of fun facts about him. So he's a poker player, for those who are poker players out there. He was also on a TV show in high school for trivia. So let's not do Trivial Pursuit today. We had that last week or 2 weeks ago. And he's a Spinal Tap fan. So we know we have many of those out there as well. So welcome, Tom, for being with us today.
Great to be here. Let's take it to 11.
Yes, indeed. I love it. So, with that, I'm going to jump right in and set the stage just for a few questions, right? Because I think that's kind of the point of this series that Julianne was talking about is getting to know some of the vendors in the space and also getting to know a little bit about, what are they doing in the space? What purpose are they serving? What needs are they meeting? That kind of thing. So I'll just, to sort of lay the groundwork for this one a little bit, PLM has, I don't know, I'd say it's somewhat matured because we've had big vendors around for 30 plus years. And for a long time, it was some of those big vendors who dominated. And if you thought PLM, you really thought of one of those big three. Sure. But then cloud showed up, let's call it 10 years ago. It's longer than that, but let's call it that. And new players started to come on the stage, but not everybody approached it in the same way. And that's kind of how I want to sort of give everybody the background today is to think about that for a minute, because we'll get into that as we go in this episode and the next one about how our guest Tom and the companies with Propel do things a little bit differently, right? And that's one of the reasons we want to bring this to everybody is to think about what's different and what's unique, because each of those things that makes these companies and these products unique has a different fit for somebody, right? Different people out there, somebody's going to say, wait, that's exactly what I need. So that's the thing I hope you're listening to and you hear today as we get into some of the questions. So I'm going to start out just with the first one because I think the audience really, this is what folks want to know to kind of orient about what we're talking about and what Propel does. So how do you guys define digital engineering in manufacturing? And where do you fit into that picture?
Sure, yeah. So for us, it really is about everything that a product company, a manufacturer, or a brand needs to do to make, market, sell, and service their product and have that be a successful enterprise, right? Because you can make the world's best product. You can do one of those things really well.
Right.
And you're not by any means guaranteed success, right? For those of us old enough to recall like Betamax versus VHS, Beta was, right, by all technical measures, the best product.
Yep.
It didn't win. It didn't
Right.
win because VHS, better recording and a better ecosystem, and people adopted it, and so on and so on. So if you don't do the things necessary to secure your product's place in the market, you're not going to be successful. So for us, our vision has always been, yeah, you got to do the PLM-ish things, right?
Right.
Bill of material management, change management, AML, AVL, all of those things. But you also have to worry about how the product is marketed and sold. So you have to appeal to the other parts of the team that haven't necessarily had a seat at the table. Marketing, sales, and service, chief among them. So that brings into it other, let's say, software categories like product information management. And we unify that with our PLM solution and with our quality solution. And that is something that makes us significantly different than really anything else out there on the market.
Okay. So I'm going to just dig into that a little bit because you're already kind of getting to another question that I know that we typically have, and that's about sort of the uniqueness. But let's just dig into some of that landscape again. So you mentioned PIM, product information management. You mentioned quality. You mentioned traditional PLM pieces.
Right.
So to me, that sounds like, you guys, when you think about digital engineering, you really are thinking about more than just the engineering function. You're thinking about everything needed to deliver the product out to the market. You said sales, marketing, service, manufacturing, all the things. So it's really pretty comprehensive.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah. And, we've, you've mentioned some of the providers in the space that have been around for a while. You called the market mature.
Yeah.
I might say the market is maybe a little bit old, a little bit tired,
right.
Maybe.
Over mature?
Maybe, right? Kind of where I'm going with that is that all of those solutions do have their place. They've been successful. They've been, vibrant solutions. No one will deny the success of PTC, Siemens, Dassault, right? They all do have their place. But it is about finding out what your unique place is, and what are the industries that where you can uniquely be positioned, and we're finding that yes, more broadly than just engineering. We're finding that in industries that tend to do a lot of contract manufacturing, tend to source a lot of their components, where their problem is less about managing captive engineering resources, and it's more about choreographing a global supply chain with global partners to make their product and to make it successful. So that's a little bit of our niche, is that we tend to be not really for the companies that make the planes, trains, and automobiles, but those that make products that operate at a higher clock speed, where they got to be faster. They tend to rely on contract manufacturers. They tend to have a high proportion of the product value come from the supply chain. They tend to make products that do live with a customer for a good chunk of time, 10, 15, 20 years, and therefore have a big service component. And then they tend to also be products that can be configured or engineered to order. So you kind of take all those things together, and our purview is decidedly bigger, broader than just engineering.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, right? Because it's just not the same focus. Like you said, you're making planes, trains, and automobiles. It's just heavy engineering. So much of what those companies do is engineering, and some of the other functions you mentioned, not that they're minimized, they're just proportionally they're not the same. And your point's well made. Lots of people out there are making products where it's more balanced than that, right? And you've really got to pay attention to all the areas.
Exactly right.
Yeah, so a little bit more about the, your unique value proposition is, now I know that you're partnered closely with Salesforce. So was that part of the strategic decision when you developed that product?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just kind of take you back to me prior to me joining Propel. I was when I was approached by the recruiter about the role, they had said, hey, there's this company that's got a new PLM solution. And that's how it was pitched, right? You ought to check them out. And my thought was, what, does the world need a new PLM, one more PLM solution?
That is a question.
Because I spent a lot of time working with one of them, 20 plus years. But he said, no, to talk to them. They're doing something different. So I talked to the CEO, who's co-founder at the time, and really did see that he was taking a very novel, unique approach to solving the traditional, still persistent problems in the marketplace. And as the technology underpinning, he was basing it on the Salesforce platform. Now, many of our customers didn't know about Salesforce, don't care about Salesforce, couldn't spell Salesforce before they started to understand what Propel was. And you don't need to. That's the beauty of it, is that everything you need from Salesforce is packaged up in our solution. If you happen to be a Salesforce customer and want to adopt it, you can unify those and get even more advantages, but you don't have to be. But back to your question, it was, can we take a new approach by not having to invest a lot of time and effort and energy into building the foundation? Instead, let's inherit that from what happens to be one of the biggest, best B2B enterprise collaboration platforms in the world. And let's focus our resources on the business logic and intelligence and application layer on top of it. So it gives us great efficiency with our R&D resources. It gives us a great pace of innovation. And then for those customers that either use Salesforce or want to connect to other systems, it's a very open platform, very configurable solution, very extensible. It gives us all those other interoperability advantages. And it just so happens to be that we're on that platform. But that was one of the big sort of brilliant ideas that the founding team had when they set off and developed Propel.
Yeah, I'm glad you dug into that, Tom, because that's one of the things I was sort of hinting at, right, at my setup is, people will think a lot of times, like you said, do we need one more PLM solution, and tend to think of them all in the same category. And I think you've already hit on two important things about, one, your view of the digital engineering market and that it is more broad than just engineering. And two, how you guys bring the product to market. And that's really unique that you said, look, there's a platform out there. It's got everything we need. Let's put the business logic on top of it, right?
Yeah,
and it makes, it's a different look to customers. It's a different value prop. It says something that hopefully, as we're talking about in the podcast, helps people understand where Propel sits. And when they say, you know what, that's a lot like our philosophy, or, we really see the value in that. That's what we're connecting here, is helping people understand that, I hope.
Exactly. And by no means do I minimize any of, any of that engineering work. Like in my early days at PTC, we were one product company back then, and it was the CAD product. It was a product called Pro Engineer. It's now called Creo. And my job was in pre-sales to win business, and it did phenomenal things that were very unique in the marketplace. It was a disruptor.
It did.
I
remember I was able to make a spring for the first time using Pro E back in 98, I think it was. It was amazing.
Something called _, which is really a deep cut for those people who to take a shape and move it along a trajectory. It was the gist of what you could do there. But there's so many great things in the engineering side of the world. And it's not that we as a solution provider need to overtake them. They're always going to be best at doing that. But there are many other people beyond engineering. It's not always the long pole in the tent for the types of industries that we serve. So can you unify all of the data coming from those other sort, work with it gracefully and elegantly, but bring that information to everyone else that needs to, allow them to contribute to it in the way that they need to, so that on the whole, your products, if you're an OEM, if you're a product company, if you're a brand, can be more successful.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I want to come back to something you were talking about a few minutes ago about the kind of customer and where this fits. And, we were sort of loosely putting it into some boxes about, well, maybe not trains, planes, and automobiles, although I don't think that's excluded from who you guys would work with. But let's just talk for a minute. What are the industries that you feel like, hey, dead on, that is perfect fit for this kind of approach we have? And if there's some where you're like, well, it's less of a fit there, feel free to share that too. But you've characterized the kind of business model maybe they would have, but let's talk a little bit about industries. Can you give us that perspective?
Sure. Yeah. So our single largest industry is med tech. And specifically when I say that, we're typically talking about medical device manufacturers, medical devices, equipment, right? So we are decidedly discrete manufacturing. There are other vendors that are in a process oriented area, and they support that business model. For us, it's around discrete products. So, med tech, devices, equipment, high tech, consumer electronics, industrial equipment, fire suppression equipment, industrial, cookware and cooking machinery, configure to order material handling equipment. And then we have consumer products goods, sporting goods manufacturers and things like that. So discrete products that tend to fit into those categories, with med tech being the largest industry vertical that we serve.
That makes sense. Those are the ones that I thought of when you were describing the contract manufacturing, the quick turn. I mean, I guess I was thinking more high tech and consumer products there.
Sure,
but that contract manufacturing and med tech, that I see plenty of that. And similarly, sort of the component situation you were describing about, well, it's not always about making everything in-house. It's about that supply chain, how you bring it all together. So it makes sense that it's those industries. Is there anything that you guys would say like, well, I think you kind of hit on it, not a fit is the continuous processes, right? The making food and beverage or pharmaceuticals, that kind of thing. Right. But anything else you would say, not just that they're not really for us?
Yeah, the consumer packaged goods side of consumer goods. So process-based, continuous, batch manufacturing, things like that. And then while we do serve and have customers that are in the supply chain, or smaller, even upstarts in an aerospace industry. We've got supply chain in automotive and in aerospace. We're not really going to operate at the OEMs in auto, aero, companies like that. Because of, it tends to be very, very high reliance on a lot of captive engineering. And that is just... It doesn't necessarily jive well with the strength of the product versus what other solutions have been built to do. Right, sure. I was at PTC for 20 plus years and we were marketing and selling wind chill, and they carved out a very successful business in aerospace and defense and heavy equipment predominantly.
Right.
And those solutions do a very nice job in those particular spaces.
So let's talk a little bit about how Propel goes to market. Do you sell directly to customers or partners?
Yeah. So we the majority of our business is direct sales. We've got our own sellers. We do have a partnership in addition to the technical partnership that we have with Salesforce. We've got a go-to-market partnership. So we kind of, jointly will refer business to each other. We have what I would say is a burgeoning reseller ecosystem. So we're starting to build that out more and more. And then an extensive system integrator ecosystem as well. So, and some of those organizations, of course, will have current customers. Many of them might be on some aging technology and are thinking forward, what's the next solution? So even the SIs can be a referral source for us. But predominantly it's direct sales, Propel badged sellers, as we build out our emerging reseller ecosystem, and then Salesforce as a partner, and a broad system integrator ecosystem as well.
I'm always interested to hear that because it's in the cloud anything space, right? It's interesting to see the different approaches of companies. Like, well, is it just the web? You just people find you and then they sort of latch onto your platform, or is there more to it than that? So it's interesting to hear. You guys have a lot of different touch points that people could find you and connect with you through.
A lot of different touch points, and we do get, just in like marketing speak, we do get a lot of business from inbound, right? We have, I think, as a marketing organization, done a very nice job of putting ourselves out there, positioning ourselves, and being findable, so that people will come to our website, consume our content, come to our blog, get interested. We're very prolific in the material that we put out, and then that's a great source for us to then engage in prospect discussions.
Absolutely, I can speak firsthand to that. You guys have a great podcast. I've caught up on that, and it's really good. I mean, I really appreciate a lot of the.
I love what you're doing here. Yeah.
So I want to ask one more as we're talking about, sort of go to market and that kind of thing. What about customer stories? Is there one or two you could highlight that just really helps people get that picture of who you guys are and how people are really succeeding with your tools?
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't have to name names if you don't want to, right?
No. I know.
Just
I'll
like what they make and how.
I'll name names. Savant Industries. On the surface, maybe you don't know the name, but if I say they own the GE lighting brand, then you probably okay, it's a significant brand. Okay. So they're in, let's say, smart home, power, entertainment equipment, and they are really all in on the platform, the Salesforce platform, using Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, but also using Propel. And they've done really a lot of great things, but they've been very acquisitive. So the GE lighting was one that maybe that kind of prompted them to say, as we're doing this, we're building out our portfolio. We've got to get better at getting a handle over everything that we're bringing to market. So they created their kind of master customer record on Salesforce with Sales Cloud, the CRM piece, and Service Cloud and Commerce Cloud, but then built out kind of the master product record in Propel. And they really unify those two things together. And in doing that, have had some tremendous benefits. 35% increase in revenue over 2 years.
Wow.
A 74% reduction in time to introduce new products through their commercial channels, and a 50% reduction in order entry labor. And the one great story about them that I always like to tell is being acquisitive. They were in the process of bringing on board a new company. They were acquiring a new company.
Right.
In automated blinds and window treatments and things like that. By the end of the day of closing that deal, the same day, they had ingested all of that company's product information into Propel and been able to do what they have to do to transform it into market-ready representations and commercialize it out through their channels, supported by Propel and Salesforce, all on the same day. So really speaking to their readiness, their ability to pivot, their ability to, not just make great products, but let the world know about those products and let their distribution channels have access to those products, right? That one of the founding principles of Propel, right? Great product, not if the world doesn't know about it, but if the world knows about it and your sellers and distributors know about it and can sell it, then you're going to be successful.
No, that really drives the point home, Tom, that you were making earlier, right? And I know a lot of people, when they think about PLM, one of the metrics that comes to mind is time to market, right? And you just really made that point of, well, time to market isn't just in engineering, right? So you acquire a company, you still want to get that product out to your channels and out to your end customers quickly. And some of that dirty work, the things you got to do, are not just engineering, right? So your point, that story really hits home for me, that where you guys are touching this product life cycle, it's a number of places. It's not just engineering, and it still has huge impact for customers, because those numbers you mentioned and that a day cut over, that's wild.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
That floored me a little bit. So, I mean, data management's always a challenge for any organization. They must have really had their methods and processes, set up well before all that.
A great team. I mean, and so much of it is also about the team. And sometimes when we talk about these things, we like to, pat ourselves on the back, but they have to have great people, and they do have great people, for sure. We're actually in the process of building an ROI case study. So we if people are interested in that story, we have that story published on our website. But we're even taking it a level further to get into the numbers to actually, quantify a lot of the value prop that they've gotten out of Propel.
That's incredible. Great story. So let's talk a little bit about the company and the history. Tell us a little bit how Propel came to be, and a little bit about the culture, if you can. I know Andrew's told us, that you're all great people and fun to work with. So let's dig in a little bit on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So company founded in 2015, so just past 10 years. �モ𝙗𝙄𝙎𝙎 was one of the co-founders. He's now on our board. Ron Hess, who's one of our chief technology minds, is still with the company. And it really was, from those early days, what can we do around product success? And they weren't really even necessarily thinking in terms of PLM. They were thinking, how can we unify all the pieces that matter most to building successful products? And that will sweep in some PLM aspects, that'll sweep in some quality, QMS, closed loop quality aspects. And even though that PIM capability wasn't there at day one, it was always a vision for what would be needed to build into the product. So that was kind of the early, and then they had experience building applications on the Salesforce platform. And they had the revelation that can be that can take away so much of the lift of what, an emerging PLM company would have to do, that if they could inherit the technology foundation, they wouldn't have to do that. And they could be, let's say, a leaner, faster moving organization and focus on what they knew best, which was on, the business intelligence and logic on top of it. So that was the kind of early origin story. The culture has always very much been one of customer success, like get the customer successful, pull the all-nighter, work the weekend, do what you have to do to make them happy and successful. Very collaborative environment internally, which I think very much reflects what we have our solution do. If someone asks me what we do and they don't necessarily know our category, I will answer with the word, it's collaboration software. Because that's really kind of what it is in like one word. That's what it is. It brings to the table people that have been kind of stiff-armed out in the past. Really, that's the DNA. It's that success depends on you bringing a lot of these different parties together. So let's help our customers do that more effectively than any other solution out there. I kind of liken it a little bit to a decathlete or maybe a triathlete, right? They have to participate in multiple different events. In the same way, we are operating in different software categories, right? For those that know the space, PLM, QMS, PIM, maybe there's some others in there as well.
Right.
We're not necessarily the best known PLM. People are going to think of PTC, or they're going to think of Siemens, or they're going to think of Dassault there. For QMS, the first one that may come to mind, maybe it's a Master Control or Viva, and PIM, maybe it's in River, or it's one of the other platforms out there. But taken together, to win the decathlon, you have to excel in 10 things. Right. And if you do really, really well in all of them, you're the world's best athlete. And that is our objective. To be the
Makes
world's
sense.
best athlete by unifying these things together and
Sure.
doing what it takes to help the company be successful.
No, it makes sense that sort of vision has been there all along about the breadth of things, not just a single focus. The single focus is product success, but it's across lots of parts of the life cycle, lots of functions, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Right.
So that makes me wonder, right? And I'm always interested in this as vendors, because we talk to vendors, what's the future look like, right? And not to give away secrets, but where are you heading? Where do you think that vision takes you and that companies need to be?
Would you be surprised if I didn't mention AI?
Yeah, I would. I'd be shocked.
We've been waiting.
Well, I'm going to mention AI, of course. I have to mention AI.
Well, you were one of the first to come out with an agentic AI message, I thought. So, early
absolutely,
on. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I listened to our friend Fino on your a couple episodes ago. Good guy.
Props to
And
Fino.
yeah, absolutely. So AI, and for us, we've branded our capability Propel One. It's kind of around, it's AI for everyone. It's about unifying everyone around the one unified product thread. Lots of different things that kind of went into the origin of the name there. But AI in a way that absolutely respects the company's IP, right? And if the solution ever has to go out to an LLM external from the solution, it does all the appropriate, it's got a trust layer, does all the appropriate data masking so that nothing is shared externally that you don't want. And then when it comes back in, it does the appropriate toxicity detection and everything so that you're getting, a good, reasonable response. It's also well grounded in that AI doesn't just equal LLM. I got a chatbot, I got an LLM connection. Cool, interesting.
Cool, right.
But if it's not grounded and have context of your data, and furthermore, any kind of invocables, any code, any APIs, any, in the language of Salesforce, automations or flows that the company has written and invested in, if it can't take advantage of that, like how good is it really? How rich a response can you really get? So ours is grounded in all of those things. So it has great context and relevance. And then the human stays in the loop. So this is around augmenting the human work experience and giving the human the opportunity to accept or reject the response, refine it, and then figure out if you then want to commit to the system taking that action or creating that record or doing whatever else it's going to do in the system. So the future, and this is today and the future. So we have the solution out. We're working with a large cohort across many different use cases, adopting Propel One. And we're working with them to kind of really understand its application and document the success that they're getting out of it and quantify the value prop that they're getting. But AI will be a continual theme, on our roadmap going forward. Another big area. And Razor Leaf is right in the center, being involved in this, is around interoperability, especially as it relates to CAD information, design information. And that CAD to PLM connection, I think, remains a bit of a challenge in this space, right? There are tools out there that do that. But it remains, I think, a complex and in some cases a costly endeavor to have those integrations built and maintained as systems change on both ends, right? And keeping it up to date. So our approach, working with partners like Razorleaf and others, is to dramatically simplify that approach with some capabilities that we're going to be introducing here in the not too distant future that really allows this multi-CAD fluency and the ability to bring in, whether it's from MCAD, whether it's coming from CAD system directly, or whether it's coming from the PDM system, which is often the case, whether it's mechanical, whether it's electrical in nature, and then being able to bring that into your PLM system and adapt to change as change happens.
That makes sense. And to me, it feels like it fits with sort of the principle you guys have about some of this is already handled, right? Much like writing on top of the Salesforce platform. A lot of that's already handled in PDM. The question is unifying it, bringing it together, connecting it, getting all the information in the right place. So it makes sense to me.
You got it. Right.
Right. Well, it's nice to hear that interoperability is something important, because that's something some data has been talking about all year with their report that customers are saying they're really struggling with. So that's good to hear. So I think we're getting close to our time, gentlemen, and we're gonna. I think we are gonna wrap this up, unfortunately. But it's been a great conversation, Tom. Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, what do we have for a summary?
Here's what I took away from the conversation in terms of kind of the questions we were digging into and getting to know more about Propel. So from that perspective of, how do you guys see the market? What do you think of when you think of digital engineering, and how do you position? I heard it's more holistic, right? We have a holistic view. It's sales, marketing, quality, service, in addition to manufacturing, engineering, a lot of the traditional things people think of with PLM. And part of what that means is it's not just PLM, right? So, and you named a couple of acronyms there and said, well, we don't necessarily have to put a category on it, but PLM, PIM, and QMS all together, right? And it's all about product success, right? So that came from when we were talking a little bit about founding a company, what's the vision, that kind of thing. But that idea of, for a product to be successful, it's more than just a great technical product. It has to be more than that. And you guys look after that whole breadth of things. And I think other things, when we were talking about, how you're positioned and what makes you unique, that's one. But another is your tech stack, right? You guys are built on the Salesforce platform. And so you're leaving a lot of sort of that work of getting the underlying technology to someone else who's already built it. They have something world-class, and you're putting business logic on top of it. So that's another interesting piece I hope people remember. We talked about how you serve the industry, who you serve, right? And that has a lot to do with what your strengths are in those areas. So you mentioned med device, you mentioned high tech, you mentioned consumer goods, handful of others, right? And industrial equipment. And it's all about people who really need that holistic view. Maybe it's fast cycle times, maybe it's other things, but it's that breadth that really fits well for what you do. I appreciated the story you mentioned. It really kind of brought that home about Savant and some of the quick turn things they're able to do. The one that really stuck with me is that, we acquired a company, and later that day, we'd really ingested all the information we needed to put their products in front of our customers. That's wild, right? So those are, I think, good data points to help people understand why you guys are unique, how you're unique. I'm trying to think of other things. The future stuff you mentioned really makes sense to me. Of course, you can't talk about the future without AI and how you guys are going about AI. I really love the approach that you mentioned and the things that are important as you think about that. And then sort of growing the scope through partnership, connection, integration, not just doing it all yourselves, sort of fits with that DNA of take something good and build upon it, connect it. So that's what I heard out of the conversation. But Tom, I'm sure I missed something. What did I miss that's important for people to have heard?
Yeah, I just want to underscore a couple of points. So that last thing you said, there's always going to be a system that does something, probably a single thing better than you can do that single thing, along with everything else that you're trying to do. So embrace that is kind of the core principle. That's exactly right. So we often talk about a single source of truth. I don't really like a unified source of truth is perhaps better, because you make use of the right tool for the right job, but you bring it into an environment that can facilitate that collaboration. So that's one point I just wanted to emphasize, but you hit it very well. And then just the Salesforce tech stack thing. While we're built on it, I just want to underscore, it doesn't mean the customer requires it. Absolutely not. And half of our customers, we were their entry into the Salesforce family. Half of them already had the system, and maybe they didn't even know they had the system, and then they came to Propel. But half had no idea, and it's kind of invisible to them. So you absolutely don't need it as a prerequisite. But if you do have it and you want to deploy the two things together, you get some extra advantages. But again, not a requirement. And then last thing I'll say, just to throw one more acronym at you, like we need more. Because we kind of we unify these different categories, and because we're trying to help our customers operate both on the bottom line, like expense reduction, which is where PLM's been pretty good historically, but also revenue growth, like that product commercialization and market-facing world where you're improving serviceability of the product, getting more money from service, and you're marketing and helping the sellers. Because we're operating both sides of the value equation, we kind of talk about our collective solution as product value management. Just as a way to, put a fine point on the fact that we're operating both the expense reduction, the revenue growth, and then, of course, throughout all of it is mitigating risk.
That's great.
Makes sense.
I love that. PVM, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Product value management. Great. Yeah, well, thank you. This has been a fantastic conversation. I certainly have learned quite a bit about Propel and some of the vision and the strategy of the company. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today, Tom.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
really
great talking
enjoyed
to you,
it.
Tom. Thanks.
Yeah, great. So with that, everybody, I'm sorry, John. I'm sorry.
Nope.
Did I step on you? And thank you, Jonathan, for being a good co-host today.
Doing my best despite technical difficulties.
All right, well, with that, we're going to... Yeah, well, that's happened. So, and we want to thank everybody today for joining us. We appreciate you being here. We know there are a lot of things you could be doing, and we really appreciate that you're listening to our podcast. And if you have any questions for Tom, please be sure to leave us a comment on this post and be sure to give it a like for us. We'd love to see that. And we hope that you turn into some future episodes. So with that, everybody, we hope you have a great afternoon or a great day. And don't forget to stay sharp. Thanks for being here and listening to this episode of Stay Sharp with 𝙤𝙎𝙎𝙎. If you like this podcast, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform or on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions for Tom, please just leave us a comment and we'll make sure to get that to him or send us an email to podcast@𝙤𝙎𝙎𝙎.com. Till next time, everybody, stay sharp.